Chapter 18. Breathe. Lunar date 3.1625.6.35. 8 hours and 36 minutes after day rise.
With another victory, the Red Eagles were one step closer to being the Marosian World Champions of Solar Faceoff. You know what that means, Seth stated. Abigale seemed to be the only one who missed his significance. Everyone from Trufon was with them, including the shepherd's dog Maxie. He was currently curled up in a ball sleeping at Abigale's feet. Forgive me, but I don't. We were swept by the Oni Knights at the prep tournament, Daniel explained with his hand gently intertwined with hers on his lap. Since they just lost to the Red Eagles, they will face the winner of our match with the Crimson Grizzlies. Over the past month, Abigale watched the Shadow Gryphons practice for their championship. She learned their strategies plus more of the lingo. Swept means that they lost to the other team without winning a single game, she reminded herself. So, if you beat both the Crimson Grizzlies and the Oni Knights, you'll advance to the finals? Correct, Seth answered. They had all arrived in Morth, the beautiful capital city of Marosian, earlier on in the morning of the 33rd. The city was built up in the Dorn mountains. It took a few hours for Abigale to adjust to the different air pressure. On the other hand, the air was crisp and clear. Since their arrival, they had divided their time between being at the tournament, sleeping in their rooms, and visiting different locales in the city. The night before, Abigale brought them to the statue of Wilbur Artanikst and tried on the armor once again. As expected, it came to life with a hum and glowing blue lights, indicating she was a descendant of the legendary hero. Back in the present, Daniel stood up and stretched. Well, we should probably go and prepare for our next match. It starts in about 20 minutes. Best of luck, son, Tomas Sheppard said from the row in front of them. Y'all got this, Deb Murry, Emmy's mother, hooted. She was decked out in Shadow Gryphons apparel. In fact, all of their parents were to varying degrees. But Emmy's mom spared no expense. Her long-sleeved shirt bore the emblem of the team with the silhouette of a griffin flying against the backdrop of the Corkin Mountains. Half her face was painted red and black, the colors of the team. And whenever the Gryphons made a big play, it was hard to tell who cheered louder, Deb or the rest of the arena. We are proud of you for battling this far, Daive Rickard, Seth's father, added, and gave them all a thumbs up. Keep focus, and I believe you can make it all the way to the end. Abigale stood up. Maxie lifted his head to see what was happening before resuming his sleeping position. Abigale leaned over and kissed Daniel on the cheek. We are cheering for you, Arnion boy. Go get 'em. Daniel smiled and kissed her back on the lips. Thank you for coming with us this weekend. It means a lot to me. To all of us, really. You are stuck with me now, she giggled. Besides, I've really enjoyed it. Tallon has been a big help explaining all the ins and outs I'm still not confident on. She motioned towards his younger brother with a smile. You will get them, Tallon encouraged. You're already picking up on it faster than most. His compliment made her stand a little taller. Thanks. The announcer came over the speakers asking for the team members of the Shadow Gryphons and the Crimson Grizzlies to make their way to the team's solar deck. Daniel, Emmy, and Seth waved goodbye and headed towards the main stage. Abigale sat down and prayed silently for Arnion to watch over her friends. Then she turned and asked, Tallon? Yeah? Can you bring up the tournament bracket again? She could have done it on her own, but she knew Tallon loved talking about the tournament. His excitement about the game made things more memorable for her. Sure, he said excitedly. It took him less than 5 seconds for the holographic display of the bracket to appear before them. Is there anything you're curious about? Tallon looked up at her. Studying the bracket, she told him what she was wanting to see. I want to look at the path the Crimson Grizzlies took to get here. Wonder if it's similar to ours or not. Tallon pointed at their initial match. Kind of similar, but yet different. The Grizzlies came into the tournament ranked 9th, and they originally played the Gugway Hunters and won, moving up into the winner's path, whereas we lost our first match and were demoted to the loser's path. The bracket was split into 2 paths. The winner's path was a much easier route to the championship match, whereas those on the loser's path need to prove themselves through the treacherous trenches. It was harder and more grueling, though immensely rewarding if the team kept winning. Once a team lost 2 games, they were out of the tournament for good. Honestly, it is rare for such a low-ranked team to make it this far. Not impossible, just rare, Tallon added. Nodding her head, Abigale agreed. Well, This weekend has seen a lot of upsets, as you have told me. Oh, yeah, tons! His eyes grew bigger in excitement. The Crimson Grizzlies have definitely been part of it. They beat the Mystical Kitsunes, which were the 4th-ranked team coming into this weekend. Many expected the Kitsunes to compete until the very end. Their loss to the Grizzlies must have really knocked the wind out of their sails, he hypothesized, since they lost their next match against the Bahu Princesses and were kicked out of the tournament, finishing 10th. The Raging Leviathans finished 11th and they came in at 5th. Overall, not a great weekend for those two teams. Abigale pointed at the display. The Llama Riders also made things interesting. They started the weekend at 12th, right? Yup, and they finished 6th, even beating out the Magical Unicorns who were originally 3rd. It was all starting to make more sense as Tallon continued to explain the bracket in greater detail. Oh, wow, I just realized they didn't have a good weekend either. They dropped 5 spots down to 8th. It's what makes this championship so much fun. Anything can happen, and anyone can win. 16 years ago, the 12th ranked team, the Jumping Kangaroos, actually won the entire thing. The first time that's ever happened. That is really cool. Hey, Abigale, Tallon, John, Emmy's father asked. Matching streaks of red and black sat under his eyes. That was as far as he'd go for painting himself for the championship. Daive, Tomas, and I are going to get some drinks and snacks before the kids' match. Do you want anything? Sure. I wouldn't mind another coffee and maybe some chocolate-covered almonds, please and thank you. She smiled. You're welcome, dear, John said with a warm smile. I'm not sure what I want, Tallon answered. Is it all right if I come with you? Sure thing, bud, Tomas replied to his son. Don't worry about the coffee, John. Clara turned to face her. I was able to brew up some of my own recipe this morning. Do you want some, Abigale? Absolutely. Cream and sugar, right? Yes, please. Her heart tingled with happiness that Clara remembered her preference. Daniel's mother added the ingredients into a thermos first before pouring the coffee. Taking the thermos in both hands, Abigale inhaled the glorious smell of Clara's homemade recipe and tried a little sip. The burning sensation forced her to hold off until it cooled down a bit. 2 weeks earlier, Abigale, Daniel, Emmy, and Seth went to visit everyone in Trufon. Like promised, Deb and John had prepared a room for her. They told her it was hers for as long as you need it. She'd never forget their overwhelming generosity. She also noticed how no one talked about the past. Daniel's parents still treated her with love and respect, as did Seth's. They accepted her with open arms and seemed to enjoy having her around. When her insecurities started to flare up, Daniel assured her it wasn't all an act. You'll find, Daniel had explained, forgiveness is a big thing for followers of Arnion. And when we forgive, we move on. We don't hold it against the other person. Obviously, there are times when it may take more time, and there are often other factors at play. But with our situation, once we worked out our forgiveness, they feel no need to bring up the past. Still, finding it difficult to believe, she didn't need to concern herself with what everyone thought. It was a breath of fresh air. Unlike with her parents who were constantly bringing up her failures and rubbing them in her face. The men finally returned with the snacks just as the introductions for the teams were beginning. Abigale joined in with the group to cheer for Daniel, Emmy, and Seth. She munched on her chocolate-covered almonds and the first match began. It was a best-of-5 series with 3 different modes: Destruction, Protection, and Extraction. Destruction and Protection were slotted in the first and second slots, as well as the 4th and 5th slots if the series needed to go that far. The Shadow Gryphons won the match of Destruction 25-17. Unfortunately, the Crimson Grizzlies evened the series with a victory in the Protection game mode. Abigale was able to catch a glimpse of Daniel up on the main holographic screen, who wore a smile on his face. He was speaking, likely to Seth and Emmy, but no one in the audience knew what he was saying. Thankfully, he appeared at peace. At the start of the tournament, when the Gryphons lost their first series to the Armored Golems, she was concerned his anger may resurface. It didn't. He took the loss with humility and acceptance. They all did. They took time to regroup, focus on their strengths, and fix any shortcomings they had in their first match. Their trust in one another helped them sweep the Raging Leviathans, which began their trek through the loser's path. Arnion, please continue to let your peace be with Daniel. May his frustrations turn to thankfulness for his friends and family who are here supporting him.
I will cover him.
Arnion's voice soothed her anxious heart. Thank you. The Shadow Gryphons won Game 3 and never turned back. They obliterated the Crimson Grizzlies in the second destruction game 25-8. They cheered and yelled uncontrollably. Abigale grabbed Tallon and lifted him up in the air. He let out a loud woohoo, which made her heart melt. He absolutely adored his older brother. Daniel had shared with her how there were times when he still beat himself up over how he treated Tallon in the summer. Abigale, with a caring smile, had reminded him that he was forgiven and not to hold it against himself. Once Daniel arrived back at the area, she ran over and kissed him passionately. Tallon and all the parents gathered around and congratulated them on their win. After a few minutes, everyone broke off into smaller groups to talk amongst themselves. Abigale and Daniel were able to steal some time alone off to the side of the main group. Great match! You all played great! Thanks. Not going to lie, I'm a bit nervous about our match against the Oni Knights, Daniel said it low enough so Emilyn and Josef couldn't hear him. He didn't want to bring down their mood. You will persevere. I know you will. She squeezed his right hand, her words filled with faith. I believe it had to happen this way. Arnion has given you a chance at redemption. Is there anything I can do to help you not be anxious about the match? She asked, meeting his eyes with her own. He ruffled his hair with his left hand. I don't know. I know I shouldn't be anxious, but I can't shake this pit in my stomach. His voice was still a whisper. We are so close, yet it feels so far away. We have to beat the team that swept us in the last tournament and beat Nolan's team in a best-of-9 series to win, he reminded her. The Red Eagles had yet to lose a match going into the grand finals. Instead of playing 2 best-of-5s, the two teams played 1 best-of-9 series to determine the champion. After the slog through the loser's path, Abigale understood the sound of exhaustion in Daniel's voice. Have you talked to Nolan yet? She continued with a lowered voice. I tried to, earlier. He is still ignoring me. I get it, Daniel replied sadly. He didn't like me before now, and after everything with Comey, he definitely hates me. Even though they are back together, the past is still alive for him. That's just who Nolan is. He holds a grudge. It's why he sees me as his rival. I beat him once, and it became his life mission to beat me every time after. Feeling a surprised twinge of jealousy at the mention of Comey's name, Abigale thought, this must have been what Daniel felt like all those times when I was with Dorn. I acknowledge these jealous thoughts, but I will not allow them to take root in my life. I have forgiven Daniel just as he has forgiven me. Grabbing his hand, she looked deep into his eyes. Just breathe in and out. Relax. Like this. She bowed her head, closed her eyes, and breathed in slowly through her nose and out through her mouth. Daniel, as he was told, repeated the exercise for 30 seconds. Abigale joined him. Better? She opened her eyes and looked up. She felt more relaxed. She hoped he did too. Daniel met her gaze. Yeah. Where'd you learn that from? Talani. I did some more research about her over the summer. It's what she'd do when she had to refocus her mind if she was nervous or afraid. Turns out she had done it in the documentaries we watched. I just never noticed because I wasn't looking for it. Oh, wow! That is really neat! He paused, absorbing the moment. It definitely helps. I imagine breathing in peaceful thoughts from Arnion and breathing out my anxieties. I still feel a bit nervous, but not nearly as much. Good. Don't overthink it, Daniel. You are a great Solar Faceoff player. All of you are. She motioned to Emmy and Seth, who were talking with Emmy's parents off to the side. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. I know you like to strategize and have a plan for everything. And while I'm no expert, I have noticed something. Oh? He smiled playfully. And what is that? You play better when you trust your instincts, she nodded. Strategizing is important and very much needed. Sometimes, though, in the heat of the moment, strategy goes out the window and your instincts take over. Lean into that. She squeezed his hands tightly and flashed a smile. Look at you, Daniel grinned. We will make a Solar Faceoff player out of you yet. Don't get your hopes up. I'm just here for the good coffee and snacks. Abigale winked with a chuckle. Is that all? He pulled her closer. Her lips twisted coyly. Well, maybe for another reason. And that is? He pried. She turned her eyes up to the ceiling. I love spending time with this guy. Oh, well, who is this guy? He also looked up as if pretending to search for the guy she was talking about. Do I know him? Oh, yeah. She looked back at him. You know him. Daniel chuckled, matching her gaze. I love spending time with you too, Abigale. Abigale stood back and faked shock. Bold of you to assume I meant you. I was talking about Tallon. Daniel wasn't fazed. Tallon is pretty great. You know what he told me last night before we went to sleep? What? She took a step closer to him as her curiosity took over. He said he used to think he'd only ever have one adoptive sister, Emmy. Another smile crept on his face. Since you came along, he was happy to have 2 older adoptive sisters. Abigale's eyes glistened. Emmitt, her younger brother, was typically indifferent towards her. During her summer break, they barely talked or saw each other. He wasn't interested in a relationship with her. Tallon was different. He looked up to her. She never had that before, and it honestly felt great. As much as she missed her parents and brothers, Abigale was starting to feel more at home with her new family. I love you, Daniel. She leaned into him for a hug. He embraced her back. I love you too, Abigale. They stood there holding each other until Emmy and Seth came over to them. Are we interrupting anything? Emmy tilted her head with a smirk. Abigale pulled away, her eyes still a little wet. No. Just enjoying the moment is all. I hate to ruin the moment, but we have to go get ready for our next match, Seth said. No long periods of rest in between matches today. Good, Daniel replied. Means no time for us to get sloppy. Helps us to stay on top of our game. It's time to continue writing our redemption story. Even if we lose the first game, we aren't out of it. We are only out of it when we start telling ourselves we are. Abigale's heart warmed. She looked at all 3 as she spoke. I believe in all of you. We all do. Daniel leaned over to give her a final kiss and she pulled away. Nope. You get a kiss after you win this match. She crossed her arms and a small smile appeared on her face. She could see the mental gymnastics happening behind his eyes. Well, I guess we better win then, Daniel replied with determination. Same goes for you, Emmy, Seth said as he turned towards the stage. What? She was genuinely confused. You will get your kiss when we win, he answered with a sly grin. I won't hold my breath, Emmy rolled her eyes. Do you doubt our ability to win? Seth questioned with surprise. No, that's not what I meant. I mean, even if we win, I am not expecting a kiss, Emmy replied matter-of-factly. Good, Seth smiled, and then continued to walk towards the solar deck. I have you right where I want you. Sure, let's go with that. Emmy shook her head. She took a step and waved her arm towards Daniel. Come on, Daniel. Can't keep Loverboy waiting. Abigale waved by and rejoined Tallon in their seats. He was intently watching something on his nexus. What is that? She inquired, leaning over. It is a gameplay video from a match Daniel and them played a few months ago against a team called the Little Elephants. The other team used a strategy in that game in the instruction mode that we still haven't been able to figure out. He didn't break his concentration from the video as he continued to speak. I was hoping to have some kind of revelation to help Daniel out against the Oni Knights, but I'm still at a loss of what happened. I may not be much help, but a set of fresh eyes could be beneficial, she offered. Sure, let me start it over. He positioned his nexus so they both could comfortably see the display. They watched the video, and as Abigale expected, she wasn't sure what she was supposed to see or not see. Neither of them found anything useful by the time the match was about to begin. It's all right, Tallon, she tried to comfort him. I'm sure we'll figure it out. Besides, once we do, they'll want to use it in the finals against the Red Eagles. Tallon's eyes lit up. Yeah! Abigale turned her attention to the screen overhead. A beep on her nexus indicated she received a message from Shyloe asking how everything was going. Abigale told her that the Gryphons were playing for a chance in the grand finals. Shyloe responded with a moving image of a dancing unicorn. Her best friend was originally going to join her for the weekend, but some early semester projects were building up and the time alone allowed her to catch up. Like mostly everyone, Shyloe had seen the video Daniel posted on the hub. Instantly, she reached out to Abigale to see what she thought. It wasn't until Shyloe arrived on campus that Abigale was able to give her an honest update in response about Dorn, her parents, and Daniel. At first, she didn't understand the whole deciding to follow Arnion thing, as she called it, but respected Abigale's choice and supported her. It was clear to everyone, Shyloe was never really a fan of Dorn, or her parents. Anyways. But she never knew how to tell Abigale that without offending her. Abigale understood and assured Shyloe she didn't hold any ill thoughts towards her. She hadn't exactly made it easy for Shyloe to give that type of input. Abigale's quest to please her parents and for prestige made her deaf to hearing the truth from those that mattered most. Cheers erupted around the room and Abigale paused her thoughts about Shyloe as the first match began. The first game was an even battle, but the Oni Knights won 25-23. Abigale's heart sank a little. No, I must remain hopeful. The second game was just as close, with the same results. The Oni Knights won 3 rounds and the Gryphons won 2. Abigale's heart was racing.
Relax. Breathe, like you told Daniel.
She listened. Arnion, if you can, I don't know, can you? I'm still new at this. I'm going to do the breathing exercise to calm myself. Can you instruct Daniel to do the same? She imagined being on the bridge of Daniel's ship, the Dark Fang, with him. She liked the name. It was named after his favorite animal, the jaguar. In fact, all of their ships were. Emmy's after a sloth and Seth's after a horse. Ah! I'm getting distracted. Abigale, calm your thoughts. Again, she imagined herself on the bridge with Daniel. She started to breathe in slowly through her nose and out through her mouth. She repeated it over and over again. At one point, she was almost certain she heard Daniel doing the same exercise with her. Thank you for listening to my book Palmara, A Dying Breed. I'd love to hear your feedback. What do you like? What do you think needs some work? What are you most interested to see happen? What questions do you have? At the end of every chapter, I'll have these slides that show how time works in Palmara, plus the different sayings and terms to help you engage with the world. As well, the characters who appear in each chapter will be found in the video description. Be sure to check it out. And if you're enjoying this and enjoy other stories, please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. You can always join the Discord with the link in the description as well. Until next time, Hinei Akmatov, which means how pleasant it is for humanity to dwell in harmony with one another. Take care.